The trial of Karen Reed divided the community of Canton, Massachusetts, and trial watchers across the country. Some say Karen killed her boyfriend after hitting him with her SUV. Others say she was framed by crooked cops. And in the wake of Karen Reed's mistrial, the mistrust for police brought another story to light, that of 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore. She was 3 months pregnant when found dead inside of her Canton, Massachusetts apartment in February of 2021. Sandra's death was ruled a suicide, but people had questions, including her family, who filed a lawsuit against 3 Stoughton police officers, alleging Sandra was groomed, sexually abused, and that her suicide may have been staged. Then in 2024, renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden came out saying he believed Sandra's death was a homicide. Now, one of the officers, 38-year-old Matthew Farwell, has been indicted on charges that he killed Sandra Birchmore and staged her suicide to hide her pregnancy and their secret relationship that allegedly started when she was just 15. Welcome back to Closing Arguments. We turn now to the story of a tragic death of 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore. This is a case that had breaking news today. But here's where the story started. It's really about a family who would not take no for an answer. The Massachusetts woman was 3 months pregnant when she was found dead in her apartment. This was 3 years ago, back in 2021. And this case also has some allegations of corrupt Massachusetts police officers. Sandra Birchmore, again, found dead in her Canton apartment. This is the same town. You've heard it if you watch us regularly on Court TV. In the trial for Karen Reed is where John O'Keefe was found dead on a fellow Boston police officer's front yard. Now, the victim in this case that we're talking about, Sandra Birchmore, she signed up for the Stoughton Police Department's Young Explorer program when she was just 13 years old. It was there that she met the man who is now accused of her murder. You see him there, Matthew Farwell. And according to an internal investigation, it was only 2 years later, after she was 13, so when she turned 15, that this alleged sexual abuse began. According to authorities, Farwell began that inappropriate relationship with Birchmore when she was 15 and he was 27. But that isn't the only accusation that is in this case. According to federal investigators, Farwell engaged in illegal sex with Birchmore while she was a minor and while he was on duty as an officer. And as time went on, their relationship continued, and eventually Birchmore became pregnant. And according to investigators, this was when Farwell turned violent. At one point, he allegedly put Birchmore in a headlock, explaining to her that he wished that she was dead. And then in February of 2021, Birchmore was discovered dead in her apartment, and her death originally ruled a suicide. But fast forward to June 26th of this year, famed forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden released his bombshell opinion. He told the world that her death was actually a homicide and that Birchmore had been strangled. Today, the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney's Office, in conjunction with the FBI, announced a federal grand jury officially indicted Matthew Farwell on charges of murder and staging the scene of her death.
Good afternoon. On February 4th, 2021, Sandra Birchmore was found dead in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment. The charges filed today in federal court allege that she was in fact murdered by Matthew Farwell 3 days earlier. At the time of her death, Sandra Birchmore was a 23-year-old woman with her entire life ahead of her, and she was pregnant with her first child. We allege that Sandra Birchmore survived years of grooming, statutory rape, and then sexual violence, all at the hands of Matthew Farwell, who was employed throughout their relationship as an officer and then detective for the Stoughton Police Department. And when it became clear to Mr. Farwell that he could no longer control Sandra Birchmore, he allegedly silenced her permanently. This morning, Matthew Farwell was arrested on a federal grand jury indictment, charging him with 1 count of killing a witness or victim. Specifically, Mr. Farwell is charged with violating Title 18 United States Code 1512 for killing Sandra Birchmore with the intent of preventing her from communicating information about his possible commission of federal crimes. Back in 2021, when the information was available, Sandra Birchmore's death was ruled a suicide, or deemed a suicide. But over the last year or so, The FBI and our office have been working exhaustively with our state partners, and we've uncovered critical new information, examined the existing information, all of which led to this federal grand jury indictment. If convicted on this charge, Mr. Farwell faces a minimum of life imprisonment. Giving voice to the voiceless, ensuring that no one is above the law, protecting the vulnerable people of Massachusetts, that's the highest calling of people in law enforcement. And this case represents those principles. And every day across Massachusetts, thousands of police officers, federal, state, local law enforcement, put their lives on the line to protect the people of Massachusetts. Mr. Farwell violated those principles, and now he faces very grave consequences.
This suspect faces charges now, but 3 years ago, Sandra Birchmore's family believed that something was wrong, did not believe that she took her own life, but they were the ones fighting as well to make sure that people knew that something was amiss. Let's get some insight into the law behind all this. Let's bring in our special guest, retired First Justice of the Westchester County Juvenile Court, Judge Carol Erskine is with us. Judge Carol, so glad to have you on, especially to talk about Massachusetts law with us. But tell me about the reaction in the community there. We know there have been a lot of questions in that community of authoritative figures, some of the systems, but what is the reaction to these charges now being announced?
Yes, well, thanks for having me on. I mean, the reaction, I think, has been what you might expect, that people had been waiting a very long time for something to happen in this case. This case became highly publicized a few years ago because of the involvement of Sandra in the Police Explorers program. And people reacted very strongly to this case, very sympathetically. But there has always been a lot of controversy over the finding that it was a suicide when so many people were making it clear that that she was not suicidal. So I think people are just feeling very elated over the fact that there might actually be justice for Sandra. But I guess my question is, why did it take the federal investigators? Why does it have to be that the federal investigators brought the charges? They did a wonderful job investigating it, but I think many people feel like Sandra was just completely ignored and sort of considered expendable by the state officials in Massachusetts through Norfolk County.
That is the biggest question here. Why did it take so long, and why even did the autopsy report not reveal more in this case, the initial one? He was still on the police force, and not until 2022 was he released from that position. Your thoughts on that aspect of it, whether or not there may have been others who helped this to be a case that did not make it to the federal grand jury until now?
Yeah, I think it's really concerning because in 2022, when there were protests outside of the Norfolk County DA's office from people that thought that the DA was not paying attention to this case. At the time, Michael Morrissey said, oh, well, we're paying attention to it. We're going to take a look at it, but there was no criminality. But really, when you think about it, how easy was it, for them to declare this a suicide, saying, well, we found her. She had this ligature around her neck, and so it was declared a suicide. The Canton police reports don't have much of the evidence that the federal investigators found. Simple things like she had laundry in the washing machine and laundry in the dryer, and that she just decided at that moment to commit suicide. I mean, these are things that were, I think, easily accessible and that seemed to have been ignored. But I think the one thing that disturbs me the most about it is that it's easy to declare it a suicide, and I think the medical examiner may have made a finding about looking at the facts, saying, well, she was on psychotropic medication and for depression, so that made it even easier for them to exploit her in death by saying, well, she had a mental health issue, she was depressed. the autopsy shows the medication of the psychotropic drug. So I think it was easy for them to jump to the conclusion of suicide, and I think that's exactly what the alleged perpetrator was expecting.
Judge Erskine, thank you so much for breaking that down for us, especially your position being there in that area. I do want to bring in our think tank who is live with us still here, criminal defense attorney Daryl Cohen, criminal defense attorney Meg Strickler, and criminal defense attorney Josh Schiffer with us as well. Why did it take so long?
Well, the fingers of corruption are in every single pie of this community. There's not a single bit of the investigation of this crime and others that doesn't go back to a small group of people who are focused in on the leadership and management of law enforcement in Norfolk County, have been for decades. This is institutionalization at the highest level. And when something bad happens, it's easier to make it go away than to do the right thing, because you're related to these people, you've worked with these people, you've dated with these people. If you go down the list of this small group of individuals that are all connected, and then you find a crime like this that's just squashed, come on, it confirms everything that we know happens behind the scenes. And it destroys legitimacy in Norfolk County and Worcester County, where Judge Erskine's from. I spent my undergraduate years there.
That's right.
It's not a surprise that there's this much corruption hiding justice from the voters of the Commonwealth. And it's horrifying. Thank you, federals, for going on in there and trying to clean it up. You need independent investigators without connections to these communities to root out the cancer that is corrupt law enforcement.
Come on, Josh. Sometimes the easiest way is the best way, and in this case, the easiest way was the worst way. I don't assume that the entire police force is corrupt. What I do know is this is going to have a terrible effect on the prosecution for Karen Reed, because they're definitely intertwined in the public's view. That's what they are.
Meg's got a look. She doesn't quite agree with that.
No, I don't agree, because I think what happened here, this is my opinion, is that the feds picked it up, and the feds made sure that they had this perfectly set up in order to get a conviction, and that's why it took a good few years. That's how the feds work. They're prosecuting cases from 2019 still. They're just how they roll. And I think if there's a Karen Reed issue, then we could somehow spin it to a federal situation if we needed to.
Let me show you this, because we have another disturbing detail that's alleged from this internal investigation that Matthew Farwell's twin brother, Officer William Farwell, also had an inappropriate relationship with Sandra Birchmore, the victim in this case. Now, according to this investigation and those documents, William Farwell also an officer, exchanged explicit messages and images with Birchmore while he was on duty. And then there was a third man alleged to have had an inappropriate relationship with Birchmore, Robert Devine. He was the man in charge of that youth mentor program. The reason that Birchmore was even connected to these officers is she was going to learn more about being a police officer one day when she grew up, which she was not. Here is Devine pictured with Birchmore as a teenager in that program prior to being interviewed as part of the internal investigation. Both of these men then resigned from the force. And here's what U.S. Attorney Joshua Levy said today at the press conference when asked about other possible suspects in this case.
I'm not going to comment on information that's not in the public record. As you heard, this is an ongoing matter, so we're going to continue to look into this matter. And if there's other individuals that we develop evidence that they've violated the federal law, we'll proceed.
A think tank, your reaction to knowing that there could be
There is more people involved, 100%. And electronics are going to prove it through the GPS, through the text messages, through all the things they exchange through social media. It's a virtual guarantee there's more charges to happen.
What are the charges going to look like?
But my question really is after she was 21, if she was doing this as an adult, 18, 19, 20, 21, that's inappropriate, but it's not illegal.
But it's
disgusting.
And here's the biggest problem. This didn't occur in a vacuum. These people all work together. Have you ever been in a small group of people where someone's doing some shenanigans? Yeah. Everybody else finds out. I'm angry about the people that turned their eyes up, changed the position of their head, and refused to see the crimes. Crimes that people go to prison for every day. in America. Having inappropriate relationship with teenage girls, that's generally a no in my community. If it's a law enforcement officer, you've got to be kidding me.
If she was a teenager when they started, if she was 20, 21, 22, I disagree. I think it's inappropriate, it is wrong, but
she was
not...
already abused, and they were in a
time.
position of power and had a relationship with her when she was 15, and yeah, 5 years later, she was already a wounded individual, and for these scumbags to go ahead after her after that is absolutely despicable.
If that's the case, and that's a big
We
if.
do have a statement. We want to hear what the Stoughton Police Chief, Donna McNamara, released after this explosive indictment. And it reads in part, the allegations against the suspect, a former police officer here, represents the single worst act of not just professional misconduct, but indeed human indecency that I have observed in a nearly 3-decade career in law enforcement. We do have to take a break, but we're going to keep talking about this case. There's a lot more to unpack. Coming up, we're going to dive into more of the horrific details, the grooming details, and the tragic death of Sandra Birchmore, including some disturbing text messages between the suspect and the victim.
It is disheartening to have to charge law enforcement officers, especially with crimes as serious. But it's our job at the Department of Justice to investigate potential crimes without fear and without favor. We do in this office what we've been doing for decades with our federal partners like the FBI. We follow the facts, regardless of where they lead. We apply the law and the principles of federal prosecution, full stop. We are not influenced by social media chatter. We are not influenced by politics. We're influenced by the facts and the law. Our mission is to do our level best to do justice in every case. And our mission today is to do justice for Sandra Birchmore.
That was U.S. Attorney Joshua Levy describing their mission in this case, mission that is now 3 years later after the death of Sandra Birchmore. So our question is, how could an officer who was sworn to protect and serve be accused of these crimes and have seemingly gone under the radar? In the press conference earlier today, Levy outlined the tragic story of Sandra Birchmore, starting with when she initially met Farwell and ending with her death.
Back in 2010, a 12-year-old Sandra Birchmore applied to join the Stoughton Police Department's Explorers program, which introduces teens to policing. Officer Matthew Farwell was an instructor in that program. And as alleged in court documents, he befriended Sandra Birchmore, contacted her online, went to the library with her, became friends on Facebook, essentially groomed her. And then he committed statutory rape by having sex with her when he was a 27-year-old police officer and she was just 15 years old. Mr. Farwell continued to have a sexual relationship with Sandra Birchmore until her death 8 years later, allegedly meeting her for sex regularly when he was on duty and being paid by the Stoughton Police Department. Now, in the weeks leading up to Sandra Birchmore's death in February 2021, she found out that she was expecting a baby. And she told Mr. Farwell that he was the father. According to court documents, Ms. Birchmore was very excited about becoming a mother, buying baby clothes and other items, taking precautions to ensure the health of her new child. Sandra Birchmore had good friends, she had a good job, she had dreams of becoming a nurse, and she had a child on the way. But Mr. Farwell did not share in that excitement. It's alleged that Mr. Farwell reacted quite negatively to the news that Sandra Birchmore was pregnant with his child. And he acted angrily, it is alleged, when Sandra Birchmore started making requests of Mr. Farwell around doctor's appointments and ultrasounds and what information would be on the birth certificate. Mr. Farwell was losing control in late 2020, early 2021, and the information that Sandra Birchmore possessed about his illegal conduct was in danger of slipping out. In fact, word started to get out about their relationship. Less than 2 weeks before she was found dead, someone called the Stoughton Police Department and disclosed that Matthew Farwell had had a relationship with Sandra Birchmore. And when Mr. Farwell learned about that call, he became visibly angry. Mr. Farwell, it is alleged in these court papers, started to lose his patience, lose his temper, and the 6'4" Mr. Farwell started to be physically violent with 4'10" Sandra Birchmore. And Sandra Birchmore told her friends that Mr. Farwell had pushed her and shoved her and put her in a chokehold. She was scared. And during that same time, Mr. Farwell was allegedly planning Sandra Birchmore's murder. For the first time, he requested a key to her apartment. And she told friends that he was oddly inspecting the apartment and looking at the closet, including the closet that she was found dead in front of. And then it all came to a head on February 1st, 2021. Mr. Farwell went over to her apartment that evening, and he strangled Sandra Birchmore to death. That's the allegation in this case. And he used his knowledge and experience as a law enforcement officer to stage her death to look like a suicide.
This was an 8-year relationship. You don't even want to call it a relationship. You can't have a relationship with someone who is under the age of consent. Starting when she was 15 years old is what the accusation is against Maxwell Farwell. Now, let's bring back in our live think tank so we can break all of this down. We have a lot of things to go through. We have all of these documents that are just now being released to the public. Daryl Cohen, Meg Strickler, and Josh Schiffler all with us. Let's talk about the grooming process that we're hearing about and just how this could have been missed in terms of this relationship, because it sounds like she's talking to some people about it.
It wasn't missed.
Ignored.
It was ignored, exactly. I want the list of people that worked with this guy, that turned a blind eye, that had sworn an oath to protect and serve, yet when it's someone they work with, when it's someone they know, when there's some sort of non-arm's length relationship, they are only too happy to turn a blind eye and let absolutely some of the most horrific crimes possible happen under the guise of a badge. The power of law enforcement to chill that speech is endless.
How much do you think law enforcement knew about this when she was found dead?
If you're talking law enforcement, the broad scope of law enforcement, probably not many, but a few knew. And if the facts are as alleged, this is more than despicable. Not just her death, but the way she was abused, apparently. But again, facts are not always what's alleged, and what's alleged are not always the facts. But this is horrendous. And I think it was a few officers who were a cadre. They came together. I'm going to protect you. You're going to protect me. And by the way, we're all in this together. That's horrendous.
I have a suspicion there'll be, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I have a suspicion there'll be some text messages that show some culpability between some other officers when this incident occurred, when they were covering it up. I have a strong suspicion there's going to be some text messages that are going to be incriminating between different folk.
We saw that in the Karen Reed case. I really want to show you this picture first, and then I'm going to get your reaction, Josh, because what we were able to find in these documents is a photo that was sent from the victim to the defendant in this case. After she finds out she's pregnant, she tells him, and it says, "Congrats, we are going to be parents." His response, according to the documents, is that, "I literally have nothing to say right now. How could you express that in text when I said I don't appreciate it?"
What a scumbag. That's the grooming. That's just abuse central, where she's trying to still please him, and he has been abusive for years and years and years, and she still looks at him as like, "Oh, I love you so much. We're going to be parents," and this kind of infantile way of looking at things. And then he slaps her down once again. It's horrible.
And I can almost have a little bit of pity for his twisted brain, more than the people that just didn't do the right thing when they found out about it. I can feel for someone, he may have abuse in his background. Something was twisted that made him go try to groom a child using his position of authority. The people that knew about it, there are going to be records of, "Hey, you should go look at this. Hey, I saw something a little bit strange." Those are the pieces of evidence that will eventually rip this open. It's a matter of going and finding them, something that we cannot trust local law enforcement to do.
But they got it now. The feds did
the feds.
subpoenas, they subpoenaed everything, and I guarantee we're going to learn some stuff.
We're going to
bad stuff.
see a lot of officers resigning from the force quickly to avoid prosecution in their view. Whether they avoid it or not, another story. We'll have to wait and see.
And save their retirements.
Let's look at what else we got, because these are newly released court documents. We've been pouring through them, highlighting just disturbing details that happened around the timing of this alleged murder and what was going on in Farwell's life. So take a look at this. On February 1st, 2021, Farwell decided to act. This is according to the state's case against him, the Fed case against him. So for him, that day provided at least two advantages. There was a blizzard that was approaching the greater Boston area, ensuring that no one would notice Birchmore's absence from work for several days, and Farwell's wife was hours away from delivering their third child. Now, Farwell is alleged to have begun this sexual relationship with Birchmore when she was only 15 years old. She'd gone for that program at the police station. Those newly released court documents state that he wished it had been sooner. In text messages with Birchmore, he romanticizes the statutory rape, according to the prosecution. Now, by discussing that the first time that they knew they were going to have sex and that he had regret that they didn't start earlier. In 2012, Farwell repeatedly disclosed to Birchmore his interest in having sex with children. This was via text message that they say Farwell asked Birchmore to pretend that she was even younger, 13 or 14 years old, when they were having sex. And he also had Birchmore join into some role playing where he posed as her older brother, simulating some kind of non-consensual incest. I mean, these are the most disgusting things that you can see in a court document.
It starts off terrible.
It gets worse.
And gets worse.
But
and
that
it's
wife
impossible
knew.
to get worse.
No, that
but it
wife
did get
knew.
worse. There's no way, in my view, that his wife did not know something was going on with someone. Whether or not she knew more of the circumstances, more of the specifics, we don't know. But there's no way that she was living with him and not being aware that he was having some sort of a relationship.
No, Daryl, don't go report that. He's just got a weird sense of humor. He's just eccentric. He's a great cop, though.
He probably downloaded child porn, too. Come on.
I'm telling you, every time people freak out on the criminal defense bar for coming up with, this is what we see. And we talk about how no one believes our outrageous allegations about fraud, abuse, betrayal of oaths. Everybody loves to trust the badge and the uniform when we're raised to do that. But the betrayal, not just of this individual, but of a system that protected him for years.
It ain't
But
just
guys,
the
most of
cops.
the time, the police officers are good, honest people.
Absolutely.
The vast majority of time, but the few make the biggest smell.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
Live think tank. It's always exciting to have you all here and going